in the wake of recent events in the US, I really wanted to focus this week on the power of women. Now, I think perhaps that feels a little odd when we reflect on the result from the US presidential election. In the weeks and months leading up to that election, I observed, because I'm here in Australia, and so I'm looking in at that situation from across the Pacific. I saw a lot of women mobilising themselves to support the Harris-Walz campaign. Now, I'm not wanting to make this video political. I'm just wanting to observe how women have behaved and their actions. So I saw a lot of women get behind Kamala Harris, I think largely because she was a woman. She was also incredibly qualified. But the sense I was getting was that the women who were, as I said, mobilised, active, vocal, putting their dollars behind it, putting their energy behind it, were women who felt the time was now for change and that Kamala Harris was a wonderful person to get behind because of her qualifications, because of her experience. And so these women took all the power that was within them, within their networks, to campaign, to fund events, so many different things. And I was really energised myself across the Pacific looking at what these women were doing, because I could see that the women were taking on, there's no denying Donald Trump is a powerful man and he has a lot of power behind him. And here were women who were saying, no, we want to take this on and we will do it our way. Now, of course, we know the result of the election, that Donald Trump has had, a huge win. And for many of those women, myself included, hugely disappointed. And I know there's a lot of women who are actually quite devastated by that and concerned and afraid. And it will be very interesting to see how these next 4 years play out. But again, I want to come back to the power that women have, because by and large, women do not have the same sort of power that men have in this world, and certainly the same sort of power that white men have. Now, me as a white woman, I sit pretty high on the hierarchical scale of people with power, and yet I feel disempowered in this situation. I feel as though I don't have much power. And so I think, well, goodness, if that's how I feel as a privileged white woman, then women of colour, black women, women with disabilities, gay women, trans women, they must be feeling so much less powerful. But what I want to do today is to remind all women, regardless of whether we have external power or not, that we are powerful. Our power does not look anything like the power that we saw on display during the presidential election, particularly from Donald Trump's campaign. It's not about fist pumps. It's not about guns. It's not about buying votes. If that was true, I don't know, but certainly that was circulated. And the power of women has nothing to do with the power that we see around the world exerted by men. In the Middle East with Netanyahu and Hezbollah, in Russia and the Ukraine with Putin, in China, in North Korea. We see lots of examples around the world of what power looks like for men. And, it's not just white men. We've got Asian men, Middle Eastern men, white men. And yet, women through the centuries have known how to be powerful despite all the power that men exert by their bigger muscle build, their bigger bodies, their ability to have guns, and all of the things that by and large men have used to exert power, which has been external. Women's power is internal, but just because it's internal and perhaps unseen does not mean that it is less powerful. And now is the time, in the wake of what's happened in the US, and as women come out of that sense of devastation and grief that they've been wrestling with for the last little while, we come back to power. And I go back to also after the voice referendum here in Australia last year, where unfortunately the majority of Australians said we do not want to hear from Indigenous voices in our parliamentary system. That devastated me, but I can't imagine what it was like for First Nations people here in Australia who've been pushing to be heard for such a long time. And I know for them it was devastating and they had to sit with that grief. But I know too that they have regrouped. Because the reality is that power that lasts, power that is not dependent on external forces, power that is not dependent on money, is true power. And women, I'm speaking to you, women, we have that power. We have honed that power over the millennia where we have not had positions of authority, where we have not had roles of power. But we have used our power behind the scenes in gentle ways, in quiet ways. And now is the time for women to be putting that power on display for the world to see. I see it in the way that there are so many more women-led businesses, women CEOs, women founders who are doing business in a different way, in a collaborative way, in a way that draws other people to them, and not just women, that draws men in as well. Because women know that life, business, career is not a zero-sum game. We know that for us to win, men don't need to lose. We know that for disabled people to be included within their abilities and with their abilities, those of us who are able-bodied, well, we're not going to lose. We know that people of colour, black people, Indigenous people, for them to rise does not mean that those of us who are part of the colonising heritage are going to lose. The pie does not diminish. There are not a limited number of slices in the pie. The pie actually expands. So I'm wanting to do two things today. First of all, I really want to encourage those women who are feeling despair, grief, sorrow, or thinking, when are things going to change? Allow yourself to sit with that grief, but don't linger there, don't live there. And the second thing, for those of us who are ready to get on and fight again, and I don't mean with fists or guns or tanks, but with the power that is within us to stand up, to say firmly, this is what I believe, this is how I'm going to do business, I am going to shape how I work in a collaborative way, I am going to invite other people into my world. I am going to encourage other women. I'm not going to tear them down. There is no ladder for women. We are a women's circle. We work together and invite each other in to bring depth and grace and wisdom and true power to play. So women, know that you are powerful, even if it doesn't really feel like it. But know that you are. Trust your power. Trust your intuitive genius. And together, we're going to create the worlds that we've been dreaming of.